The sky above Dracoria was dark and restless, swirling with heavy clouds as if warning the city below of the coming storm. Lightning streaked across the horizon, casting jagged shadows over the floating towers of the Dragon City. At the highest point, the Dragon Emperor Xylarian watched silently from his golden balcony, his massive wings folded neatly behind him. His eyes, sharp and golden, scanned the city below, restless and impatient. To him, humans were weak, delicate creatures, fit only to serve or be ignored. His own kind, the dragons, were the rulers of the skies, the masters of strength, and the keepers of fire. But that day, something unusual was about to shake his carefully ordered world. On the busy streets far below, a human named Lena balanced a tray of steaming meals as she navigated the crowded market square. She moved quickly, dodging stalls and customers alike, her brown hair tied back in a simple braid, her eyes alert to every movement. Humans were small and fragile in Dracoria, but Lena had learned to survive with quick thinking and a careful step. She had worked in the city for many years, serving dragon nobles and ordinary citizens alike, and she knew the rules of the city: never provoke a dragon, never question their judgment, and always move carefully. Yet today, Lena noticed something unusual that made her freeze. A small shape fell from the sky, tumbling through the stormy air. It was a baby dragon, no larger than a child, with tiny wings that seemed unable to catch the wind. Its scales shimmered in pale green, and its golden eyes were wide with fear. A sharp crack of thunder made the tiny creature squeal in panic. And it landed awkwardly on the cobblestone street, rolling slightly before coming to a stop. The humans around her screamed and scattered, afraid to approach. Dragons, she knew, rarely tolerated weakness. But Lena didn't hesitate. Something inside her compelled her to act. Carefully, she stepped forward and scooped the baby dragon into her arms. It trembled against her chest, tiny claws clutching at her tunic, and Lena held it gently, speaking softly in soothing words she didn't even know she knew. From his tower, Xylarian noticed immediately. He had seen many humans in his lifetime, and none had dared approach a dragon, let alone a member of his family. The baby dragon was his youngest, Emberling, barely a few weeks old, and he was furious at seeing it on the streets, vulnerable and at risk. "Who dares touch my child?" Xylarian's voice roared over the city, carried by the storm winds. Guards and advisors flinched at the sound. But Lena did not flinch. She held Emberling tighter as the dragon shrieked in fear, shielding him from the drizzle that soaked her hair. The baby's wings twitched weakly, unable to lift him, and Lena realized immediately that he was injured. One wing bent awkwardly, and he could not fly. "Shh, it's okay," Lena whispered, rocking him gently. She ignored the roar from above, focusing only on the fragile life in her arms. "I'll help you, I promise." Xylarian's golden eyes narrowed. A human, handling his child. And not with fear, not with trembling, but with care. Something stirred in him that he had never felt before. Curiosity. He descended from his tower with powerful beats of his wings, his massive form casting shadows over the square. People scattered, screaming, fearing both the storm and the Emperor's presence. Yet Lena remained still, unafraid. She held Emberling close, turning her body slightly to shield him as Xylarian landed with a thunderous impact, sending a gust of wind through the market. "Step aside, human!" Xylarian's voice was like rolling thunder. "You do not belong near my child." I can help him," Lena said, her voice steady. "He's hurt. He can't fly. Please, let me carry him to safety." Xylarian stared at her, his sharp gaze piercing through her. He expected fear, trembling, begging. Instead, he saw determination, and something inside him shifted. It was not often that a human impressed him, but this one, she was different. Different, a voice whispered behind him. His advisors dared not speak too loudly. He ignored them. The storm above mirrored the storm within him. He bent low, coming closer to Lena so that his massive head hovered near her. Emberling squeaked softly, startled by the enormous presence, but Lena did not flinch. She adjusted her hold, keeping the baby dragon close to her chest. "You are brave, human," Xylarian said slowly, his voice softer now, almost curious. "And foolish. Do you understand the danger you face?" "Yes," Lena said, meeting his golden eyes. "But I cannot leave him alone. He needs help." Xylarian tilted his head, observing the tiny dragon in her arms. Emberling's small body was trembling, not from fear of her, but from weakness. His little wings were bent awkwardly, his scales dulled by the rain. Even the Emperor could see the truth. His child was vulnerable. "You touch him with care," Xylarian said, almost to himself. "Unlike others." "I'll protect him," Lena said, her voice firm. "He's small, but he's not weak. He just needs someone who understands." For a moment, silence fell over the market. The rain pattered softly, and even the wind seemed to pause. Xylarian's heart, long hardened by centuries of power and command, felt a strange tug he could not name. "Follow me," he commanded at last. "I will take you to a safe place." Lena hesitated for a moment. The Emperor's presence was intimidating, and no human had ever spoken so freely before. But she trusted her instinct. She nodded, keeping Emberling pressed to her chest. Together they ascended to the upper levels of Dracoria, through winding staircases carved into the cliffs and towers. Along the way, Lena noticed the grandeur of the city from above. The streets below were like rivers of life, full of dragons moving with strength and authority. Humans were small figures among them, but from her height, Lena could see the entire pattern of life in the city. Dragons were powerful, yes, but careful, organized, and proud. Yet they seemed incomplete. Something was missing. She did not know it yet, but her presence and her courage would be that missing piece. They reached the Emperor's private chambers, a grand hall filled with golden light and carved pillars. Xylarian carefully handed Emberling to a specially prepared nest, soft and warm, lined with feathers and cloth. Lena knelt beside it, checking the baby dragon for injuries. His breathing was shallow, but steady. "See?" she said softly. "He's going to be okay." Xylarian watched silently, leaning against the wall. The storm outside had calmed, leaving only a gentle drizzle. His mind was unusually quiet, as if the usual roar of authority had been replaced by thought. "Why do you care so much for him?" Xylarian finally asked. "Because he's alive," Lena said simply. "Because every life matters, no matter how small." The Emperor stared at her, the weight of her words settling over him like a gentle rain. He had spent centuries believing in strength and dominance. He had ruled with fear and respect, commanding dragons and humans alike. But he had never seen someone care with such pure intent, without expectation or fear. "Humans," Xylarian murmured, more to himself than to her. "Perhaps I have underestimated you." Lena smiled faintly, exhausted from the storm and the tension. Emberling nuzzled against her shoulder, making a small squeaking sound. Xylarian felt something stir within him, an unfamiliar warmth that made him take a careful step closer to the nest. For the first time in his life, the Dragon Emperor felt respect, not fear, for a human. And for the first time, he realized that courage did not always roar. Sometimes it was quiet, gentle, and unseen, like Lena holding a fragile baby dragon in her arms. Outside, the city of Dracoria began to shine under the clearing skies. The storm had passed, but the real storm, the one in Xylarian's heart, was only just beginning. And little did he know, The presence of a simple human waitress would soon change everything he believed about strength, power, and life itself. Xylarian could not sleep that night. The city of Dracoria was quiet, the usual hum of dragon life softened by the calm after the storm. Yet inside his chambers, the Dragon Emperor's mind raced. He paced slowly, his massive claws clicking against the polished stone floor, thinking about the small human who had dared to handle his child. Lena. Her name echoed in his mind, not as a human he should dismiss, but as someone who had challenged his assumptions with quiet courage. Emberling, the baby dragon, slept in a soft nest nearby, his small body rising and falling with delicate breaths. Xylarian's eyes softened as he watched him. His youngest child was fragile, weaker than most dragons. Yet it was Lena who had given him care and hope in a moment of danger. The thought unsettled Xylarian, but also fascinated him. A human had shown more bravery than many dragons he knew. The next morning, Xylarian summoned Lena. She arrived quickly, her usual calm composure steady, despite the enormity of standing before the Dragon Emperor. Emberling nestled in her arms, small and fragile, but safe. Xylarian studied her carefully, the golden sunlight reflecting off his scales, making him appear almost radiant, almost human in emotion. "You have returned," Xylarian said, his voice calm but firm. "I have considered your actions from yesterday." "I came as soon as I could," Lena replied, bowing slightly. She placed Emberling gently in his nest, stroking the baby dragon's scales. "He needed care. I had no choice." Xylarian's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in curiosity. "Humans rarely act without self-interest. Why did you risk yourself for him?" Lena looked up, meeting his gaze steadily. "Because he is alive. He deserves help. Strength is not always about fire or size. Sometimes it is about heart." The Emperor remained silent for a long moment. Her words struck a chord he could not ignore. In all his years he had ruled by power, by fear, by strength. Yet here was a human showing courage in a way he could not command, could not conquer, and could not ignore. "You speak of strength," he said finally, "and yet you are small, fragile. You could have been crushed under the weight of this city or the fury of dragons, and still you act as if your size matters nothing." "I have learned that courage is not measured by size or fire," Lena said softly. "Even a small being can make a difference." Xylarian's mind whirled. He wanted to dismiss her words, but he could not. Something about her presence, her calm determination, stirred a feeling he had never known, respect, perhaps even admiration. "Very well," he said at last. "You will remain here for a time. Not as a servant, not as a curiosity. You will care for Emberling, and I will observe." Lena blinked in surprise, but quickly nodded. "I will do my best," she said. "He will be safe with me." Over the next few days, a quiet routine formed. Lena tended to Emberling with patience and care. She fed him, cleaned him, and helped him exercise his wings, encouraging the baby dragon to stretch and strengthen. Xylarian watched from a distance, sometimes approaching to observe. He noticed how Emberling responded to Lena's voice, how the baby dragon's small eyes lit with trust and recognition. Xylarian felt something strange, pride, perhaps, or maybe something deeper. The Emperor had never felt this way before, not toward a human, not toward his child. Lena's presence challenged everything he had believed about power, strength, and worth. One morning, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A pack of sky hunters, rogue dragons that had rejected the Emperor's rule, was approaching the outskirts of Dracoria. They sought to capture Emberling, believing a weak dragon could be used as a pawn to challenge Xylarian's authority. Xylarian's golden eyes narrowed. The Sky Hunters were strong and ruthless, but their arrogance often led to mistakes. He looked at Lena, who held Emberling carefully. "This will be dangerous," he said. "I know," Lena replied calmly, "but we can protect him together." The Emperor tilted his massive head, studying her. "Together?" "Yes," she said simply. "Even the strongest need help sometimes." Xylarian could not argue with that. He had always been strong, feared, and respected, yet in this moment he realized that Lena's courage was a force he could not ignore. When the Sky Hunters arrived, they circled above Dracoria, their scales glinting in the sunlight. They had underestimated the city and its ruler. Xylarian took to the air, his wings casting shadows over the square as he confronted them. Lena followed carefully, Emberling safely in her arms. She stayed low, moving quickly and quietly, guiding the baby dragon away from danger. The battle was fierce. Xylarian's fire clashed with the hunter's sharp claws and teeth. He moved with precision, protecting both Lena and Emberling. Yet it was Lena's quick thinking that made the difference. She led Emberling through a narrow path between the towers, confusing the hunters and giving Xylarian the upper hand. From above, Xylarian watched her. The human's bravery and intelligence amazed him. She had no wings, no fire, no strength like the dragons surrounding her. Yet she was fearless, careful, and effective. Xylarian realized that strength was not only in power but in mind, courage, and heart. After hours of careful maneuvering, the Sky Hunters were forced to retreat, beaten not only by Xylarian's strength, but by the unexpected strategy of a human. Lena placed Emberling down in his nest, exhausted but smiling. The baby dragon nuzzled her hand, his small tail flicking in happiness. Xylarian landed beside them, his massive wings folding with a graceful sweep. "You were remarkable," he said quietly. "I did not expect such skill from one so small." Lena looked up, panting from the exertion, but she smiled. "Strength comes in many forms," she said softly. "Even the smallest heart can face the greatest storm." For the first time, Xylarian felt humility. Not as a lesson taught, but as a truth recognized. Humans were not weak. They were clever, resilient, and courageous. Lena had shown him a strength he could not have imagined, a strength beyond fire or claws. Days passed, and Xylarian began to change. He spent more time observing Lena and Emberling, learning from their interactions. He noticed how Lena encouraged Emberling to try small flights, how she never scolded him for failing, how she celebrated each tiny victory. The baby dragon's wings grew stronger and his eyes brighter. Xylarian could not deny the truth. Lena's care was making a real difference. One afternoon, as the sun painted the city in golden light, Xylarian approached Lena. "You have taught me much," he said quietly, "about courage, patience, and care. I had not known this before." Lena smiled faintly. "I do not teach to gain praise," she said. "I do it because it is right." The Emperor looked at her, a deep respect in his gaze. "Perhaps humans are more valuable than I believed. Perhaps I have judged your kind too harshly." Lena's eyes met his, steady and sincere. "Strength is not always seen in fire or size," she said. "Sometimes it is in the heart." Xylarian was silent, reflecting on her words. For centuries, he had valued power above all else. Yet here, in the simple care of a human for a fragile dragon, he had seen something greater than power, empathy, courage, and love. The bond between Lena and Emberling grew stronger each day. The baby dragon learned to trust her completely, following her instructions with patience and effort. Xylarian observed quietly, feeling something he could not name. Pride, yes, but also a deep admiration for the human who had dared to stand beside him and his child. Word spread through Dracoria of the unusual alliance. The Dragon Emperor and a human working together to care for a fragile dragon. Some whispered in disbelief, others in fear. The city had never seen such a thing. Yet Xylarian did not care. He had witnessed courage and care firsthand, and he knew the truth. Humans, though small, could teach dragons lessons about heart, patience, and strength. One evening, as the sun set in fiery colors over the floating towers, Xylarian spoke to Lena in private. "You have changed my view of the world," he said. "I had believed dragons to be the only rulers of strength. Yet you and Emberling have shown me that courage and care matter as much as fire and scale." Lena bowed slightly. "I am grateful you see it," she said softly. "The world is stronger when we help each other, not when we divide ourselves by size or power." Xylarian nodded, a feeling of respect and newfound understanding settling over him. For the first time, he saw humans not as weak creatures to be dismissed, but as beings capable of great courage and wisdom. And little did either of them know the lessons learned in these quiet days would soon be tested. Forces within Dracoria, jealous and suspicious of this unusual human influence, were already stirring, plotting in shadows. But for now, Xylarian, Lena, and Emberling shared a quiet peace, the calm before a storm that would challenge both dragons and humans alike, and change the Emperor forever. The peace in Dracoria did not last long. Whispers moved through the city faster than lightning, carried by dragons and humans alike. Some dragons were uneasy, even angry, that a human had gained the Emperor's trust. Others questioned his judgment, murmuring that an ordinary human should never be allowed to influence royal matters or touch the young Emberling. Among them, jealousy and fear brewed quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike. Xylarian noticed the tension but ignored it for the moment. His attention was on Emberling and Lena. Every day, he watched them together and was amazed at how much progress the baby dragon had made. Emberling could now flap his wings carefully, sometimes lifting himself a few inches into the air before landing safely in Lena's arms. The baby dragon's eyes sparkled with confidence, reflecting the trust he had developed in the human who cared for him. "You have done well," Xylarian said one morning, his deep voice carrying across the room. Lena smiled faintly, brushing her hands over Emberling's tiny scales. "He is learning," she said softly. "All he needed was patience and encouragement. Even the smallest heart can grow strong with care." Xylarian's eyes softened, and for a moment he felt something unfamiliar: humility. The Emperor had ruled for centuries with power, demanding respect, commanding fear. Yet here was a human showing him a lesson that no dragon could teach. But that morning, a shadow passed over the floating city. From the far towers, spies whispered warnings. A small faction of dragon nobles, dissatisfied with Xylarian's decisions, had begun plotting against him. They saw Lena as a threat, a human intruder who had no place near the throne. One whispered to another, "If we remove her, the Emperor will return to his senses. Only strength must rule, not sentiment." The conspirators began moving carefully, gathering allies in secret, waiting for the perfect moment. Meanwhile, Xylarian, oblivious to the brewing plot, spent the day observing Lena and Emberling. He noticed how Emberling hesitated when trying to jump from one perch to another, how Lena would stretch out her hands to guide him, encouraging him without forcing him. The Emperor realized something profound. True strength could not be forced. It had to grow naturally, with patience and trust. "You remind me of him," Xylarian said suddenly, his gaze fixed on Lena. "Who?" Lena asked, curious. "Your courage," he replied, "and his determination. You teach me that even the smallest being can face the greatest challenge without fear." Lena's cheeks warmed slightly. "It is not about size or power," she said gently. "It is about believing in what you can do and helping others to do the same." Xylarian did not answer immediately. He simply watched her, trying to understand the depth of her words. For centuries, he had measured life by strength, by fire and scale, by the ability to dominate. And yet here was a human proving that courage, patience, and care could rival any dragon's power. As evening fell, Xylarian felt the stirrings of unease. The city was too quiet, too calm. A subtle tension hung in the air like the moment before a storm. He could feel it in the wind, in the faint movements of the guards, in the whispered words of his advisors. Something was coming. It arrived sooner than expected. A messenger, breathless and wide-eyed, burst into Xylarian's chambers. "Your Majesty!" the dragon shouted. "There is trouble at the eastern towers. A group of rebels, dragon nobles, have gathered, planning to take control of Emberling and confront you directly." Xylarian's golden eyes flared. He had anticipated opposition, but the boldness of the plot startled him. "How many?" he demanded. "Dozens," the messenger replied. "They have claws, fire, and wings ready. They mean to challenge you and the human." Lena, standing nearby, froze for a moment, then spoke firmly. "Then we must be ready. Emberling and I will not let them take him." Xylarian studied her closely. He could have sent Lena away, told her to hide. It would have been safer. But he saw the determination in her eyes, the courage that had already saved Emberling once. "Very well," he said. "We face them together." The city seemed to hold its breath as Xylarian took to the air, carrying Lena carefully on his back while Emberling clung to her. The wind roared around them, carrying the faint scent of fire and stone. The rebels had gathered near the eastern towers, their scales glinting in the fading sunlight, eyes full of malice and arrogance. They had underestimated the Emperor's reach and the unexpected courage of a human. The battle began with a roar. Xylarian dove with precision, his massive wings slicing through the air as fire erupted from his mouth. The rebels responded with sharp claws and bursts of flame, attempting to overwhelm him. Lena held Emberling tightly, keeping him safe as they dodged and weaved through the sky. She shouted instructions when necessary, guiding Xylarian's movements with careful timing, avoiding obstacles and traps. Despite his strength, Xylarian realized that Lena's quick thinking and strategic mind were invaluable. She directed him toward weak points, spotted dangers before they arrived, and even suggested ways to protect Emberling in the heat of the battle. For the first time, Xylarian experienced the power of partnership, a strength not born from fire or size, but from unity and trust. Emberling, despite his small size and injured wing, began to show signs of courage. Following Lena's careful guidance, he attempted a small flight, flapping his wings with determination. The rebels were momentarily distracted, surprised that such a fragile dragon dared to move in the chaos. The baby dragon's small effort, combined with Lena's intelligence and Xylarian's power, began to turn the battle in their favor. Hours passed, the sun dipping below the horizon as the fight continued. Sweat and fire mingled in the air, scales scorched, feathers singed, and hearts racing with tension. Yet Lena never faltered. She adjusted Emberling's movements, encouraged him with soft words, and used her small size to navigate places Xylarian could not reach. The Emperor's respect for her grew with every moment, his admiration deepening into something he could not name. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the rebels began to retreat. Their numbers thinned, their confidence shaken by the unexpected coordination of dragon and human. Xylarian landed with a heavy thud, protecting Lena and Emberling as the last of the rebels fled. The city below erupted in whispers of awe and fear. No one had ever seen such a thing. The Dragon Emperor defeated his enemies not only with power, but with the help of a human and a fragile baby dragon. Xylarian stepped forward, breathing heavily, his golden eyes fixed on Lena. "You were remarkable," he said quietly. "I did not know humans could be so brave, so clever, so capable." Lena smiled faintly, exhausted but proud. "Courage is not measured in fire or scale," she said softly. "It is measured in heart. Even the smallest being can make a difference if they try." Xylarian's mind was heavy with thought. The battle had shown him more than he could have imagined. Strength was not always in size or power. Strategy, patience, and heart could be just as strong, sometimes stronger, and humans, whom he had always dismissed, could embody those qualities in ways dragons never would. The days that followed were filled with quiet lessons and reflection. Xylarian observed Lena carefully, learning how she handled Emberling's care with patience and creativity. He began to question traditions he had followed for centuries, realizing that fear and dominance were not the only ways to lead. Compassion, empathy, and understanding could also command respect and loyalty. Word of the battle and Lena's role spread through Dracoria. Some dragons were angry, some impressed, and some fearful. Yet Xylarian did not care about the whispers. He had witnessed courage firsthand, and it had changed him. Lena had shown him that life could be guided not only by strength but by care, by wisdom, and by courage that came in unexpected forms. One evening, as the sun set in fiery reds and oranges, Xylarian spoke to Lena privately. "You have taught me lessons I never imagined," he said quietly. "Not just about Emberling, but about life, about courage, and about humans." Lena looked at him, tired but unwavering. "I do not teach to gain praise," she said softly. "I do it because it is right. Every life matters. Every heart deserves care." The Emperor nodded, feeling something unfamiliar, gratitude, admiration, and perhaps even a sense of humility. For the first time, he understood that true power was not just in fire or scale, but in heart, in courage, and in the bonds between beings of different kinds. Emberling, now stronger and more confident, flapped his wings beside them. The baby dragon squeaked happily, his small tail flicking with excitement. Xylarian watched him and Lena together, realizing that life was stronger when courage and care were combined. Even the smallest heart could face the greatest storm if guided by love and wisdom. And though challenges still lingered in the shadows of Dracoria, one truth had become clear. The Dragon Emperor's life, and the world around him, would never be the same. Lena had changed him, Emberling had inspired him, and together they were beginning to shape a future where courage, heart, and wisdom mattered more than power alone. The city of Dracoria was alive with whispers, shadows moving along the towers as if hiding in fear. Word had spread that a human had earned the trust of the Dragon Emperor and was now working closely with his youngest child, Emberling. Not everyone approved. A small faction of dragon nobles, jealous and bitter, had plotted for weeks to remove Lena and challenge Xylarian's rule. They believed that no human should have influence over dragons, and especially not over the heir of the Emperor. Xylarian, however, had already begun to change. He had seen courage in Lena, strength in Emberling, and wisdom in the smallest of hearts. He now knew that leadership was not only about fear and dominance, but about understanding, empathy, and courage. Still, he understood that the rebels were dangerous, cunning, and willing to strike at the first sign of weakness. One morning, the Emperor stood on his balcony, golden eyes scanning the city below. Lena approached, careful but determined, holding Emberling close. The baby dragon was no longer fragile. His wings were stronger, his eyes brighter, and his spirit unshakable. Xylarian looked at her and spoke quietly. "They are planning something," he said. "The nobles have grown impatient. They will strike soon. I cannot protect you both alone." Lena met his gaze steadily. "Then we fight together," she said. "Emberling and I will not let them take what is ours." The Emperor nodded, feeling a surge of admiration. Lena's courage was unwavering. Emberling nuzzled her hand, sensing the tension. Despite the looming danger, the bond between human and dragon was unbreakable. By midday, the rebels had gathered near the eastern towers, their wings stretched, their claws sharp, their eyes full of malice. They had underestimated the city's loyalty and the unexpected alliance between dragon and human. Xylarian, Lena, and Emberling ascended into the skies, preparing for the confrontation. The battle began with a thunderous roar. Xylarian's massive wings cut through the air, flames erupting from his mouth. Lena held Emberling close, guiding him carefully. Though small, the baby dragon followed her instructions, flapping his wings, dodging attacks, and even striking weak points in the rebels' formation. Lena's quick thinking and strategic mind made the difference, directing Xylarian and Emberling with precise timing. The rebels were shocked. They had expected fear and hesitation from a human. Instead, they faced courage, intelligence, and determination. Emberling, despite his size, moved with agility, surprising the enemy at every turn. He ducked, weaved, and even managed a small but fierce flame, learned under Lena's careful guidance. Xylarian's power was unmatched, but it was Lena and Emberling's cooperation that created the decisive edge. Hours passed as fire and shadow danced across the skies. The rebels attempted to surround them, but Lena's clever strategies and Xylarian's might kept them at bay. Emberling's confidence grew with every maneuver, and his small attacks, though unpolished, inspired fear among the rebels. They realized that even a seemingly weak dragon could be dangerous when guided by courage and intelligence. Finally, the rebels began to falter. Their numbers thinned, their coordination weakened by the unexpected partnership of human and dragons. One by one, they were forced to retreat, leaving the skies above Dracoria quiet once more. The city below erupted in whispers of awe and astonishment. Never had such a sight been seen. The Dragon Emperor, a human, and a small baby dragon working together to defend their home. Xylarian landed heavily on the balcony of his palace, wings folding behind him. Lena stepped carefully, holding Emberling, who chirped softly, exhausted but triumphant. The Emperor looked at them both, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of pride and admiration. "You have both shown me courage beyond what I imagined," he said quietly. "I have judged humans too harshly. Today I have seen what heart, intelligence, and determination can accomplish. Strength is not only in fire or claws, it is also in courage, in care, and in unity." Lena smiled faintly, tired but proud. "Even the smallest heart can face the greatest challenges," she said. "Size and power do not always matter. Care, patience, and courage can be stronger than fire or scale." Emberling nuzzled her hand, his eyes sparkling. He had grown stronger, not only physically, but in spirit, because of the trust and care he had received. Xylarian looked at his child, then at Lena, and felt something he had never felt before: humility. The following days brought change. The Emperor publicly praised Lena for her bravery and her role in protecting Emberling. The Dragon Court was shocked, and whispers of dissent grew among those who had once plotted against them. But Xylarian ignored the murmurs. He had seen the truth. Humans could teach dragons lessons in courage, patience, and empathy. Under his leadership, changes began slowly. Dragons who had been proud and distant started observing humans differently, noticing their cleverness and bravery. Emberling continued to grow stronger under Lena's guidance, learning to fly with confidence. His once weak wings were now capable of carrying him across the sky, guided by both dragon strength and human wisdom. The rebels, meanwhile, were brought to the Emperor's court. They had underestimated the combined power of courage, intelligence, and unity. Xylarian addressed them calmly, his voice carrying authority. "You sought to undermine the city and to remove the human who cared for my child," he said. "You have failed. Let this be a lesson. Strength alone is not enough. Respect, courage, and wisdom are equally vital. Those who cannot see this will find themselves powerless, not by my hand, but by the truth they refuse to understand." The rebels bowed, defeated, realizing that their arrogance had blinded them. Xylarian's power had always been great, but it was his understanding and the bond he had formed with Lena and Emberling that had truly defeated them. In the quiet moments that followed, Xylarian reflected on the transformation in his life. He had begun to see humans not as weak creatures, but as beings capable of immense courage and wisdom. He had learned that leadership was not only about fear and control, but about respect, empathy, and partnership. Lena continued to care for Emberling, teaching him patience and resilience. The baby dragon's spirit had grown, and he no longer hesitated to explore, to try new things, to challenge himself. He had learned the most important lesson of all, that even the smallest, weakest being could be powerful when guided with care and courage. Xylarian watched them often, feeling pride and admiration. He realized that his life had changed forever. He was no longer the emperor who ruled solely by fear. He was a leader who understood the value of courage, empathy, and heart. Humans had taught him that even the smallest and most fragile could inspire greatness. One evening, as the sun set over Dracoria, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Xylarian spoke to Lena quietly. "You have changed my world," he said, "not only by saving my child, but by teaching me that courage, care, and heart are as important as strength and fire. You have shown me that humans can be more than I ever imagined." Lena smiled softly. "I did what I felt was right," she said, "and Emberling taught me too. Life is stronger when we help each other, when we face challenges together, and when we believe in the heart of those around us." The Emperor nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. He looked at Emberling, now capable of small flights and playful bursts of flame, and then at Lena, the human who had changed his life. Together they had faced danger, overcome fear, and shown the city that courage and unity could triumph over arrogance and power. Dracoria began a new era. Dragons and humans started learning from each other, respecting the strength of courage, wisdom, and care. The city, once ruled solely by fear and power, became a place where hearts mattered as much as strength, and where even the smallest and weakest could make a difference. Xylarian, Lena, and Emberling stood together on the highest balcony, looking out over the city they had protected. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of clouds and stone, of fire and life. The Dragon Emperor smiled, realizing that life had given him a gift far greater than power, the lesson that courage, care, and heart could change not only one life, but the entire world. And Emberling, once weak and fragile, now soared above them, wings strong and confident, a symbol of hope, courage, and the extraordinary bond between a human and a dragon. Dracoria would never be the same again, and neither would its emperor. Through the courage of a simple human, the care of a young dragon, and the wisdom to see beyond power, a new future had begun, one where even the smallest hearts could change the world.